Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's presentation sponsored by C4, which stands for the Cross Community Climate Collaborative. Our Riverside team, as you may or may not know, has been working with, from about the end of 2022 on the development of a climate action and resilience plan for Riverside. Our team has been focused in community engagement across 6 different areas, including place, prosperity, health and well-being, connectivity, living infrastructure, and also resource regeneration. So tonight, one of our topic areas being place, our coordinator for that is Trustee Kristen Evans, who has arranged tonight's speaker. I would like to invite Kristen to the podium to introduce the speaker and just give a little bit of background.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very excited to have Ken Walczak here today with Dark Sky International and with the Adler Planetarium. I had the pleasure of attending another presentation that he did in LaGrange, and I'm sure you will find it extremely fascinating. And with that, Ken Walczak.
Thank you all for coming out. It's not even dark yet. So, and just to start out, I'm curious. What is the first thing you think of when you think of darkness? Be honest.
Darks?
What'd you say?
Did you say dark?
Yes, darkness. Darkness. Springsteen. Okay. Dark on the edge.
Peace.
Peace? Who said that? Nice. Anything else?
Stars. Relief.
You guys are right on. Because, I started a new intro to this talk after thinking about, actually, it was after my talk in LaGrange. And I was like, I really want to strike a different chord. By the way, you didn't answer. You're the youngest among us. What do you think when you think of darkness?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Interesting. Do you think of nothing or is it about it?
Are you scared of the dark? No.
That's nice. It's natural to be afraid of the dark. But I think I want to reframe the darkness. Think of it as, instead of thinking darkness, think of peaceness. And that's kind of what a couple of you said. Is actually, it's calming. Darkness is peaceful. But we need light. We do need light to survive. We couldn't survive in the dark all the time. So a world without light is unthinkable. But I like to say that we kind of said, if we have that, let's get more of it and more of it. And then can we have a 24/7 life where we always have that light to give us that opportunity to maybe do more instead of doing better. So darkness is actually just as important as light. So don't be afraid of the dark, but we actually think of the dark as a very necessary part of our world. So let's start out with a little perception. Now, a lot of times I always request can we do this talk in the dark? So that way the only thing you see is the light that I'm projecting. But I know video makes it a little hard. All the videographers are always like, come on. So we can do it for now. Just, I want you to think about how we perceive what is bright and what is dark, and what is darkness, what is light. It's really, that's okay. It's really a sense of how did that happen? The image you saw with the title and the background, the letters never changed their color. They never changed their brightness. The only thing that changed was the context, was the background. I don't know if you noticed that, but the words never changed how bright they were. But suddenly when you're in a dark frame, in the darkness, you don't need that much for something to seem quite bright. Our eyes are amazing instruments. They actually have a range of perception that is 8 more orders of magnitude. That's millions, tens of millions actually. Which means that you can see everything perceptively, no problem, in the brightest daylight, to even, you could actually navigate a forest in full moonlight. But a lot of times we don't give ourselves a chance because we kind of changed the way we think about our world. It used to be that this was the world at night. Well, it's a little bit of a joke, but the idea is that you'd see stars, and if you were seeing the Earth at night from above, from outside of the Earth's atmosphere, it would just look like a black object. There's no light coming from the Earth at night until we made it. This is actually what the world looks like at night now. This is actually put together from a satellite that orbits the Earth every night and literally maps the entire light of the Earth at night, every night. And it's definitely not the same as it was, well, before the advent, really, of electric lights, about the age of your town, about 150 years. And you can see, like, Pacific Ocean's still dark. So we've kind of gone from this being the view of, oh yeah, there you go, of what we see at night, to something very, very different. So, well, let's see. With an audience, sometimes raising hands doesn't make the impact. Let's see. Just like when you say, oh, smile for a camera, I'm going to ask you to say stars if you're answering yes. So, have you ever seen the Milky Way with your own eyes? Say
Stars.
So, how many people would say no stars? Oh my God, you're like, I think this is why you live in Riverside. Because usually, by the way, I give a lot of talks, public talks and things at the Adler Planetarium, for example. We have groups of people that will come in just randomly, and I ask that question, and generally, my rule of thumb is if you're below the age of 40, you're not going to say you've seen the Milky Way. So where did you see the Milky Way? Okay. You're the one, I think. So we've changed what nighttime, the light of nighttime is from this to sort of something of our own making now. This is actually mapping that was done by one of the projects I work on at the Adler Planetarium, where we launch high-altitude balloons up into the stratosphere with cameras that float, that take images, very high-resolution color images of the Earth at night on a regional scale. So in fact, we're planning our first mapping mission of the Chicago area this fall. This one's actually from Indianapolis. It can tell us a lot about all that light that we're sending up into the sky. Where's it coming from? What's it doing? How is it changing our world? So one of the people I work with at Dark Sky International is Betty Maya Foote. She's an amazing astrophotographer. This is actually from Bryce Canyon out in Utah. Just her standing on a cliff, looking at the amazing range of stars. I'm like, oh, Betty Maya, do me a favor. Give me your photos. I'm also a photographer by training. And I took the metadata from her photos, said, okay, I'm going to follow the exact same exposures, set my camera up the exact same as hers, and take the exact same picture from here. Well, I live in Chicago, so close by. And then what I did was Photoshop in the sky. So this is obviously image courtesy of Betty Maya, and this is image ruined by. I think you just felt what we're missing. Now, the first thing we all think of when we maybe think of light pollution, you came to this talk saying, okay, yeah, maybe I've heard something about light pollution, is the loss of the night sky. But I hope by the end of this talk, you'll realize that it has so many effects. And the beautiful thing about light pollution, that you can end it at the speed of light. Just like you flicked out the switch, boop, suddenly we have darkness. It's not a hard solution. It's just one that we have to be thoughtful about. In fact, a study was done, it just released about 2 years ago now, and that found that the increase in light pollution, annual increase in light pollution worldwide is almost 10%. It's actually particularly bad in Europe and North America. Now think about if you had some other pollutant, for example, let's call it a pollutant, increasing at 10% per year, you would be shocked and there would be action. And so that's where I come in, that hopefully I can bring you guys on board to say, like, yeah, I think something should be done about this. In fact, this is a map of the United States done by how bright your area is. It's taken from those satellite images, and you piece it together and say, well, if you're standing on the ground looking up and you see all these lights, how much does that affect your night sky? So this is, in a sense, a light pollution map of the United States. You can probably see where we are, that big white blob in Lake Michigan. And, there's quite a scatter of range. Now, give you a sense of scale of how important this is, that question I asked about if you've seen the Milky Way, you'd have to be in an area that was in the green or lower down to the black to see the Milky Way. So let's remove that from our, okay. That's what's left of the United States, that you can still see the Milky Way from your backyard, I should say. But we are not the only ones, or the sky is not the only thing we're concerned about. Did you know that 70% of all mammals are nocturnal? All species of mammals are nocturnal, 70% of them are. That's by far, obviously the majority of mammals are nocturnal, which means for them, they've evolved over billions of years to have a nighttime environment, large eyes, very sensitive systems to actually, in ecosystems that actually come out at night, that aren't there in the day, that they can thrive and survive and live in. Well, for them, darkness is the necessity. Darkness is the natural environment. So let's see what's left of the United States where it's still as it was billions of years ago. This is what's left of the United States where there is no light pollution. I call it the dark sky archipelago of our nation, unfortunately. And if you think about it, it's not just the prettiest of cute mammals, but it's actually also insects and birds and all these other creatures that create an ecosystem that is vital for pollination, for, like I said, the healthiness of that ecosystem. There are many, many species that need to survive and thrive for our well-being as well. So this is from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. If you've ever seen, you can actually go to birdcast.net, I think it is, might be time. Just search birdcast. And literally there'd be a nightly map like this. And they'll even give you warnings about when there's going to be, in fact, this is the beginning of the spring migration season for birds, when there's going to be a large amount of birds flying overhead. Now, 80%, well, I get this, I always get my 80s and 70s mixed up. Okay, 70% of birds in North America are migratory. So 70% of all the birds in North America are migratory, and 80% of those do so at night. And you're like, oh, maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you did. But we can actually dramatize what that really means. So, like I said, on a nightly basis, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology uses weather radar, and there are so many birds flying in the sky, you can actually use weather radar to pick them out. Just like, they're like clouds in a sense. And so what they do is they piece together all that weather radar data to be able to calculate the density of birds, and then you can calculate how many there are. Science. Okay. So I'm going to hit the play button, because this is the beginning of the night on October 6th. And what's going to happen is you're going to see a red line go across the United States. That red line is the line of sunset. So behind that red line is dark. Now, I want you to keep an eye on two things, is how dense the map is, and that number right there. 54 million birds are in flight at the beginning. Here we go. 100 million, 200 million? It's sunset. Over 1 billion birds. Actually, it was almost 1.2 billion birds on the night of October 6, 2023, were actually in flight. And did you see where the majority of them were? They're crossing right over your heads. We are in the Mississippi Flyway for bird migration. When the sun rises, suddenly that number drops off. Birds like to migrate at night because it's cooler, the winds are lower, they can expend less energy. And if we're changing that environment, that they're used to navigating by stars and other cues on the ground, maybe moonlight, and then suddenly you light up things that look like stars, like buildings, suddenly they're distracted, and their natural navigation systems that have evolved, like I said, over millions of years are suddenly disrupted. So you've probably heard this story about a year and a half ago at McCormick Place, right along the lakefront. By the way, birds like to follow water. That there was, they had an event. They usually turn off their lights at night. It's a big windowed building right on the lakefront, obviously. But that night they had a special event for it was for the Chicago Marathon. Lights were on, and the next morning, over 1,000 birds were carcasses around the entire building were collected. It was the worst event they actually saw in a history of collecting these birds, because they use them for a scientific study to find out about bird fatalities because of lit windows at McCormick Place, in fact. In fact, folks from the Field Museum are the ones that have done the studies, and they even found on nights where the windows were only half lit, there was a 54% drop in the amount of bird collisions compared to if the windows were all lit. There was actually a 76% increase compared to just their regular stasis of where they had the lighting. So this was known. In fact, you can see this was published in 2021. And remember, that happened in 2023. So I like to have a good follow-up on this is because what happened was because of the pushback from, that became an international story. I had people, researchers from Germany going, oh my God, did you hear about that? I'm like, yeah, I live right by it. I definitely heard about it. And what happened was there's so much pushback that I forgot the quasi-organization that runs the McCormick Place, but they actually spent a good deal of money to treat the windows. And I guess this last fall migration, there was a huge drop in the bird fatalities. So we know the solutions in a lot of these cases. And the solution is not having so much light behind your windows, in a sense, because it distracts birds. And by the way, a lot of bird collisions, in fact, it's the second leading cause of bird fatalities in North America. About 600 million birds a year die because of building collisions. And a lot of those, majority of them are done at night because of migrating through, for migration. So, and a lot of those, by the way, are on low altitude buildings. It's not just the high rises, it's actually ground level buildings. So it's always good for homeowners to keep this in mind as well. But now it's not just the birds. There's another part of our ecosystem that is very sensitive to light, and it's trees. Now, it's a little embarrassing. This photo is actually from right outside the Adler Planetarium. We have a grove of elm trees, and we keep talking to the park district about this dumb light, which lights up a beach in the middle of the winter, for example. I don't know why. And the elm trees, you can actually see right underneath those very high, bright, high-pressure sodium, do have an effect on the budding and the leaf loss time of trees. So, can you see it? Can you see the trees that were under the light? In fact, let's look a little bit deeper into the fall. Way beyond the time that they should still be having their trees, they should have lost their leaves already. They're still thinking, because it's one of the triggers for tree life and tree changes throughout a year, is light. When it has a lot of light, they're going to keep their leaves. And what happens is when they keep their leaves, it actually strains their systems, and they're pumping more energy into the existence of those leaves, so it's going to make them less resilient throughout a winter. So I've mentioned a lot of the ecosystems that are the ecology, I should say, that's affected by light at night. And now I mentioned all those mammals that are nocturnal. Here's just a partial list. There's a few. Yeah, but the one you didn't see on that list was... We are not nocturnal. We are actually diurnal. Yes, exactly. There's a reason why we're not on that list. By the way, I was like doing a Google. I said, I need a picture for nocturnal humans. And I was like, this is just a film opening, which I never saw the film, but it's a little bit of a misnomer having no sense. We are actually daytime animals. We need light, as we started this talk off about. We need light to survive. We need light to be part of our world. But we are built chemically and biologically to have night as the time when we restore. We need light to live, night to restore. If we don't have a night, the darkness of night that a natural night brings, it has long-term consequences. It's only been about, I would say, about 20, 25 years. If you look at the research, like the number of research papers done about the exposure of light at night on human health, maybe in the 80s and 90s, a little bit, and then over the last about 20 years, there's been huge growth in the research. And so it's not as though it hasn't been there before, it's just that we've never noticed it. This is my old apartment I used to live in Chicago that fundamentally, it was in one sense you could say it was great. I didn't even have to pay an electric bill for lights because the street lights were lighting up our house, but I could read a newspaper by it at night, no problem. But a little facetiously, because on the longer term, it's actually not good for us. What this image, this graphic is trying to show is that if you notice all the clocks in that person's body are synced. And that's part of that daily rhythm, that circadian rhythm, that our body is using light cues to tell us, oh, it's time to start shutting these systems down. It's time to relax these systems. It's time to, for example, turn on our melatonin production. You've probably heard of melatonin, maybe. And it only is produced in our body when there is not an exposure to blue light. Blue light is actually very triggering to our bodies. There's a sensor in our eyes. You've probably heard of the rods and cones, right? That see color during the day and then see more sensitively during night. But there's actually a third sensor. In fact, it's called an IPRGC. It doesn't roll off the tongue as easy as rods and cones, but it's there. It was actually only discovered about 30 years ago. In fact, a Nobel Prize went to the biologists who actually discovered it. There's like, why is there a third sensor in our eye? Because it's not technically a visual sensor. It's not like you're seeing because it's there. It's actually telling your body, all right, let's check, see if it's still daylight. What is the difference between daylight light and nighttime light? Think of it in a long historical perspective. What color is the day? Yellow, and what color is the sky? Blue, of course. Yeah, the beautiful blue glow that we get from the scattering of light of the sun in the atmosphere. But at night, it was typically maybe firelight would be the only thing we'd ever light our world with. Firelight's very warm. So it's something that biologically we clicked into, that it was like, hey, here's a good way to tell our body whether it's day or night. And without those cues, it actually disrupts our circadian rhythm. It disrupts a lot of the systems in our body. And it, in fact, one study found that they did a study on night shift workers. Actually, it was mainly nurses. That they found that the incidences of breast cancer were completely correlated to the increase in their exposure to light at night. Without that circadian rhythm, we actually don't fight off things like infections and cancers and things like that, because melatonin helps the immune system trigger properly. But we think, okay, we have created this 24/7 world. We definitely need to have some light at night to be able to function, because we've got to be realistic. We're not just going to all just, as soon as the sun sets, fall asleep, right? We've got homework to do. All right. But we need light to secure us, right? To give us that ability to move around at night and be safe in our environment and to be able to do the things we want. And so that's why, like in this case, I never know if I should shame the communities where these things are. This happened to be in Glen Ellen. Okay, so you guys are right. And it was a garage behind a business that obviously they were trying to protect their space. But when light is used wrong, now I'm not a let's say a Luxite, which is like a Luddite for light. I don't say that, oh, you don't need light at all, let's get rid of it all. I'm just saying let's do it right. If they want to spend the money and all this energy and all this light to protect themselves, well, I don't think they're really helping, because, did you notice Adam? Adam was one of my dark sky Chicago compatriots, and he stood in as the creepy guy that, let's do that again. He was there the whole time, except when the light is applied wrong, it actually, remember I said that your eyes have 8 orders of magnitude of range, but not at one time. You've probably had like headlight glare hit you at some point and you can't see anymore, or maybe like, oh, right around now it's going to become a spring equinox. The sun's going to set straight to the west, maybe right down the street, and you're blinded. You can't see anything other than that bright source, because that 8 orders of magnitude always has a range of the brightest thing. So if you have a bright light shine in your eyes, let's say bright's over this way, suddenly the range of what you can see is all over there. You can no longer see in the darkness. And that's what's happening when you use light the wrong way. It actually blinds you to what's behind in the shadows. Now, I don't use too many technical little science plots, but I had to do this one, because this is one of my favorite studies. Came out about 10 years ago now. And really quickly, what it's showing you is this fundamentally is the amount of in different cultures, in different areas of the world, everything from the UK across the world to Australia, China, the US, over history, since the 1700s, they plotted out how much we spend per, let's say, lumen of light. You know, a really bright light has a lot of lumens, lower light, and how many lumens those lights actually emit. So I guess what I'm saying is, they found this line is consistent for like over 300 years. They actually found that we almost spend 1% of our GDP across cultures, across history, on light. But the only thing that's changed since the 1700s, they were using whale oil and candles, is how efficient that light is. So if we're always spending the same amount of money, and the light is getting more and more and more efficient, what does that mean? We're always going to be using more light. And in fact, in this case, in the 1900s, in the UK, 1900, we're to now, which is only 120 years, 25 years or so, we're actually using 10,000 times more light and spending the same amount of money, by the way. So it's hard to break that cycle, because if we're always so used to always spending the same amount of money, then it's like, oh, you're going to get more light as long as it's more efficient, which is what's happening. So LEDs, by the way, they are so much more efficient than old incandescent bulbs. But if they're not used right, and we're just saying, hey, look how cheap it is, let's get some more of them, you're not solving this problem. By the way, they also projected, remember I said this was done in, I think it was 2010 or 2012, they actually projected 2030 being 100,000 times more than we did in 1990. So actually a tenfold increase to where we were in 2005. And according to that very first study I mentioned, where it was about a 10% increase per year, it actually comports with this earlier study. We use a lot of light. Sometimes we don't have to use that much. And there's a thing called the rebound effect, which when something gets cheaper, we use more of it. It's like, oh, wow, great. So, I don't have to spend as much, and I can, you get so much more out of it. And so this is just, by the way, the Department of Energy estimated that 143 trillion watt hours of energy. That's a lot of energy. And this is annually in the United States only for municipal and commercial lighting, not private lighting. And think about that. That's 85 million tons of carbon emissions just for outdoor lights, just for the US per year, and just for municipal and commercial. That's a lot of light. In fact, we can estimate from that satellite imagery how much energy is actually flying out into space. I mean, if you have a street light, or if you have a light in your backyard, or maybe a sign or something at your business, and that light is going up into space, obviously no one saw it except if there was a satellite up there, so by definition, I think we could say it's wasted light. So in Illinois, 483 gigawatt hours of light energy just in Illinois was emitted out into space. Hopefully that's starting to strike home. It's like, hey, that actually might be something we could do if we could do something about that. Sounds like a good climate solution. Well, I think so. But you're like, yeah, but this is what the world we built. We need that light, right? I'm going to give you a real quick comparison. Berlin is a city. It's like if you take Cook County and then the Brandenburg area, which is kind of like the county in and around Berlin, we're about the same area. These are the same scale, the same size scale. And then the populations are pretty close, 4.5 million to 5.2 million, okay, of Cook County versus, now the difference you're seeing is this bottom. Don't worry about the units. The units are just a matter of amount of energy. The important part is that they literally are emitting nearly 8 times less energy out into space than we are. And like I said, I work with a researcher out of Berlin, and he's always like, if it's about safety, ask your students. I work with students all the time. Would they feel more comfortable walking at night on the streets of Berlin or the streets of Chicago? And probably Berlin. And so it's not like suddenly it's an awful hellscape or something of like, crime or anything like that, because, we've shown that if you use light right and you have the right policies, then actually it's not going to be, you're not going to be worse off. It can be done. That's the idea I'm trying to get across. So I mentioned briefly at the beginning about some of the work we do at the Adler Planetarium. We designed to build research instruments to collect data about what is the environment at night, what does it look like, and also we fly things from above, so we can actually see the effect of light pollution on the night sky from below, just from the ground, or put the pieces together where you can actually get both sides of the story. And then this map is done, like I said, this is from a flight we did over Indianapolis. This is just the north suburbs of Indianapolis, where we can say, okay, use a little data. This is GIS data, so it's all the zoning. Every single little blue square you're seeing, or blue plunk, is residential. The red is commercial, and then et cetera, green is green space. And then we can do an analysis, like where is that light coming from? Because I think if you just take a sledgehammer to say, we're just gonna solve this problem by turning out lights, well, you're probably not gonna have a lot of people on board. But if you could be smart about it and use the science and the data and say like, all right, if we want to just drop the amount of light being used or emitted, maybe we can do it smartly. So not everybody's affected, but only those are affected who are maybe causing the most problem. So this is my second and I think my last sciencey looking plot. And this is what we found. That first column is 100% of all the light emitted that we observed. And then this is the amount of area those areas took. So pink is residential in this case. You can see that the total area taken up by residential lighting is over 50%. Residential land area, I should say. And it emitted 34% of all the light we saw. Then, so in a weird way, you might think like, oh, roads. Roads are probably the first thing that comes, all that street light, right? But actually, the street light only accounted for less than a quarter of all the light emissions. The two things to really take away is that commercial, which is orange in this, only took up 7% of the land, but it emitted 1/5 of all the light. Commercial lighting is generally the brightest source. Remember that gas station image I showed earlier? It's kind of typical. Car dealerships, parking lots. There are a lot of things in commercial properties that emit a lot of light. But the thing I really wanted to point out was, in fact, we're doing follow-up research now about residential lighting, because that was kind of surprising to us, that when you really add it up, like even here, I forgot to pull the statistics. Actually, no, I'll have them later for Riverside. We actually have I have the distribution of land use and land rights for you. But we were surprised that literally the single largest emitter was residential lighting. Not because it's so bright, because there's just so much of it. So if you wanted to tackle the problem, you might say, you know what? Let's talk to these commercial producers, because there's not too many of them, but they do generate a lot of energy, or a lot of light energy up into the sky. But, there's a lot of residential lighting. So I took this is a satellite data. I took that data, and it's on the color's not, it's just a false color image, which means like the reds, here's Midway, for example, you see the turbo of Midway, very bright, are all in the red range. Blues are kind of the middle, and then dark, all the way down to the dark blue. Now, this red outline, by the way, is Chicago, and that's obviously Riverside. You guys are doing pretty well. I heard there, might be an interest in the town to pursue what's called a dark sky designation as a dark sky community. And I could say from my general knowledge is that I think you're pretty close. You're on the road. There's some things you need to do, but at least you're not beyond hope. I think you got some good things going on here. So let's zoom in a little bit at this thing. And say, where are the bright things here in Riverside? Now, we can do kind of like what I did with that data from Indianapolis and say, all right, well, let's look at each parcel in Riverside. Now, there's two ways to look at this. One is the total light emission from any one parcel. It skews the story a little bit, because top left, that really bright white one, that's actually the part of Brookfield Zoo. It's a huge amount of land, though, that's the thing. So it all adds up. It's going to be really, and then that big street going across is all the railway line. So it adds up, and it makes it kind of gives you the wrong idea. So, but it is one way to look at the information. But the other way to look at it is by the average. Each of these parcels. Now we look at now Brookfield doesn't look that bright. It is kind of a total emitter, but now. There are a few things I want to point out here, and once again, I usually don't come to shame people in your town, but this satellite image that this data was from March 19th of 2023. Now, it's still pretty chilly in March. Is your swimming pool open in March? No. So why is it the brightest emitter in the entire country?
Because they never turn them off.
I don't understand why. It's on the roof, right? Like those lights are on.
That's the garage, that's the parking lot.
I think it's the entire one, actually. Oh, is it? Yeah, it's, anyway. Yes, and then,
They never turn them off.
wonder why? They like to pay the electrical?
I don't, never asked them.
Someone should. Then there are some other interesting outliers, and like I said, when it comes especially to the private property, I won't, I'll just leave this up here for a second. Just let you have what it will. By the way, these two very bright ones on Harlem are actually one at the very top is a gas station. That's a gas station. Gas stations are notoriously bad for
Do you think
light
the
emission.
pool has the lights on for safety? Is it a legal issue?
I think it's not their lights are on because they spent a fortune on it, it's brand new and they want everybody to see it.
They said it's an advertisement, probably.
Could be an
This-
insurance issue.
Yeah, but insurance, I would love to hear what an insurance company says about having light on at night at a closed building. Anyway,
Well,
but
it's the pool.
It's a
Yes,
water. It's
but-
open.
but is it? It's private.
Around.
Yes, exactly. But the point I was trying to make here is it starts the discussion, but also is that there's just the range of, it's not just all one thing. It's actually a larger thing. So for example, we could do that same comparison where we take, here's the total area of all those types of land use in your town. Blue being the roads. Roads are significant, but there's so many of them that you see. I like to point out that the scale difference, single-family residential emits about, same proportion of its land. Same with roads. Government, actually, you emit a little bit more, and some of that is because of the schools, I think. I don't know for sure. Like I said, I just did a first order, real quick gloss over this. Obviously you notice the green space, does not emit very much light, right? But it's the ones, there's not very much commercial property in Riverside. But in the proportion to it kind of comports to the other research we've done. So, what is the solution? Well, there is, luckily, I'm actually a board member of Dark Sky International, and a couple of years ago, or actually a few years ago now, we worked with the Illuminating Engineering Society, which is a professional organization of lighting designers and contractors and professionals, to say, let's all work on this problem together. So we came up with what's called the 5 Principles of Responsible Outdoor Lighting. And it's super simple. If you do these 5 things, you literally can solve almost all the problem. And you don't have to read all the details, because I'll kind of give you some examples. Number 1, and these are sort of in order of importance. Is it useful? So for example, is it useful to have a light on a pool in the middle of the winter? I don't know, that's your choice. But my point is that even, do you really need that light? If you have a backyard with, in a garage or something and you want to light it up, you saw what bad lighting could do. Put it on a motion sensor. If you have a light on all the time, you will never know when someone's there because you're not paying attention as much as, but if a light comes on, also surprises the potential criminal, but it also warns you. Motion sensing, and if it goes off at the raccoons and stuff, well, okay. But then if it, so you can actually have this done in a way that, do you even need that light? Now, once again, we have so much what's called sky glow here in the region, because Chicago emits so much light and everything. I bet if you walked outside of your house, if you walked outside where you weren't blinded by your own lights, you would be able to see just fine with just the glow from the night. So do you really need that light? Do you need that park lit after curfew? Do you need where someone might steal a piece of grass? I don't know. Do you need a parking lot lit all night long when there's no business going on? There's not even any employees there anymore. Landscape lighting, don't get me started. And then I hope, I have not spent a night here in Riverside. I bet just from looking at the character of your town, I bet you don't have too many of those. Let's hope you don't. So if you do say, all right, yes, we do need that light, for whatever reason, for navigation, for safety, for security or something, well, put it in the right place. This is like that security thing I mentioned with the light on the garage. So for example, if you're gonna have light and you say you do need it, make sure it's shining in the right direction. So the example again of a street light going right through my bedroom window, very bright lights from, I don't know if you can see, but there's like someone's bedroom window literally right there that is next to that gas station. This is billboards. I don't think you guys have any billboards in your town. Are very, very bad examples of lighting. This was actually taken by a dark sky advocate up in Door County. And these are all billboard lights along the highway. And it's actually a very dark area, except for, yep.
What floor is your bedroom on?
Like 2.5.
2.5 stories?
The street lights are actually right, almost level to our windows.
Okay.
And once again, if it's a street light, why is it shining this way? Street's on there. Yeah. All right, so if you're you need that light, and you want it to light a street, well, light the street, don't light the neighbors.
Well, but to play
Yeah.
devil's advocate,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely a dark skies advocate,
Mhm.
but I'm guessing the reason why they have the light higher is because then it spreads over a greater area and you need fewer
lights.
parking
Yes, you're exactly right. But the point is that actually, I don't have that. The spread of that light. So if here's the fixture and the light is going from this direction, all the way around to that direction, and the street is there beneath the light. We're smart. We can engineer things. There are lighting that you put like shields on it that it literally hits the road going, this is what like you're saying. If it's high, like a 30 or 40 foot pole, then you're going to actually get more distribution.
Right.
But why is that distribution going this way?
Right,
It's just
right.
wasted light. So you're right. You could have low poles, but you'd need a lot. But then you'd also think that you wouldn't need as much voltage on each one. Sure, it's a materials difference versus like power difference, for example.
I'm just trying to think of how we got here.
Oh, we got here because people didn't think about it. I'm seriously at that. I work with some lighting engineers, and that I'm like, I'm trying to anonymize some of this too. It's like where it's like, hey, this lighting is affecting, like the observatory we have on the lake. And they're like, oh no, but we put in the best new lighting. It's LEDs and they're real efficient and everything. But literally, when you open up the dome, if anybody's ever been to the dome observatory at the planetarium, now when we open up the dome to go observe, there's a beam of light coming in it because they were really excited about the fact that they put these new efficient bulbs in, and those are lighting engineers. Anyway, that's how we got there. Yes.
It'd be interesting, you said 23 was the picture of Riverside? Yeah.
Yes. Well, actually, yeah.
Because there was a big rehab done at the junior high in our grade school, in which they had lights on the building that shined out. And I lived on the second floor, and I was just blinded. And
Was that after or before?
No, with
this
the
is before.
Okay.
This is before. Now, it's a little bit, they have lights going down, and they have actually like a pool of light where it just goes down. I would like to know if you do that again of our town,
What?
how much?
Do you know when that transition happened?
Yes, last year.
Last year, okay. I think I might have, well, we could talk. I actually have it in my GIS software. I can maybe show you at the end of this. I think I might have some observations from after then, yeah. Okay, so, all right, so if you're convinced that you need that light, all right, so it's useful. And at least we put it in the right direction. So it's shielded. Next thing to ask is, well, does it have to be that bright? And quite often, in fact, so this was, I worked with a suburb that were working on, they had some lighting complaints in their town, and it was mainly like these coach lights that were popular around a lot of suburban homes, that they were finding out that other neighbors were complaining. It's like, oh, theirs is too bright. It's actually these LEDs again. So I went out, and this is actually one of the council persons from his house, and I said, hey, let's take your lights, and we're going to replace them with, they're about 1/3 of the wattage. I don't have the exact numbers on hand. We went from like 15 to 5 or something like that, or yeah, I think it was, or 12 to 4 watt bulbs. Now, like I said, I'm a photographer by trade, so I try, photography will never match how great our eyes are at perceiving things, but at least what I try to do is match the visual perception. So this was when the lights were bright, and this is when the lights were reduced.
Go back to that.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because there's so much, remember I said that little window of perception we have always shifts to the brightest light. So if you reduce the light on your, that are shining into your eyes, you actually have a better view. In fact, he said, oh my God, I think the fire department can now find my house. You can actually see the address. Before, the address was just completely blurred out. Okay. So if you've decided, yes, we need this light, and at least we're shining in the right way, maybe you could use, in this case, 1/3 of the light that was being used before. And the fourth rule, principle of responsible lighting is controlled. Now, this is where I was getting to that thing about, you could actually have a light on a motion sensor. So efficient. Motion sense light is like just great. If it never comes on, it's never needed. If it comes on, then it's needed. And so also you can have, modern LEDs are amazing. They can have dimmers. We actually have ways you can do timers. So there's so many opportunities and possibilities that if you're going to have that light and it's not in the right place, it's the right level, but why not only use it when it's needed?
How do you,
Yeah.
one question for us out here is, how do you satisfy the motion sensor without it always being set off by critters?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really, like, we have one on the back of our house that sometimes just randomly goes off.
Mm-hmm. You can actually, that's a little more of a technical thing. There are solutions. Okay.
Okay,
In
that's fine.
fact, no, for example, our neighbor, we've shared, like I'm in Chicago, and right over the fence, our neighbor put in garage lights that are just shining in their backyard. And every time I walk out to like go take the trash out or whatever, boop, they always turn. I'm like, so I was like, hey, Guillermo, do me a favor. Let's go. And so what we did was we just put like a little, actually we've tilted it down. So it's not just shining that way, because it picks up everything. It even picks up the traffic, on the road 2 yards away. So we tilted it down. That reduced a lot of it. And then I actually just put a little shield on our side of it. So
I mean, we inherited this. So
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
trying to figure out how I can minimize.
there are better motion sensing lighting units, and there are some that are just real broad. They're just. In fact, a lot of consumer products, what they do is make sure that you don't miss that thing coming on. So they do as wide of an angle. You can actually, a lot of times they'll say beam angle of what the sensitivity of it. Try to get a thin one, and that will help a lot. If something's running around right underneath it, you probably not going to have it.
This slide is also like 30 feet up in the air.
Ooh.
It's really high up.
Yeah.
So like, if you lowered it, would it
Yes, it's
not
gonna have
catch
a
as
look.
much stuff?
Yeah. Think of it like just like a little, like a little conical, perception, range of perception. And if you put it up, it's going to just get wider. Yeah. Yep.
Well, most motion sensors have a little sensitivity dial on
Mm-hmm.
it, so.
That too.
Just-
Exactly.
30 feet up.
And there,
It's a big screwdriver.
yeah, and there are also, it's time to rent a ladder. All right. So, and finally, there's one last thing, and that kind of, about the controlled. Yeah, this was outside, once again, outside the planetarium. During pandemic, we actually built this beautiful thing called the telescope terrace. Yeah, and unfortunately, even the contractors we got, they didn't talk to me. They put in these really bright lights, and but one thing is they gave us the controls for the system, and so we could actually turn them off. And so there's still navigation light there, And it's that thing again, the light of the city is more than enough glowing in the sky to give you enough navigation. But now there's one last element to, and this is the one that maybe goes back to that part that I was saying about human health. So that blue light triggers not only us, but a lot of animals. It's not exclusively blue light is the most photosensitive to many species, but it covers most animals. But humans, in this case, what I did was I just made this is the rainbow of light you get from daylight. This is the rainbow of light you get from sunset. And so this would be what our body naturally experiences, and there's a thing called Kelvin. For now, it's a color temperature. It's a way to judge color temperature or kind of quantify color temperature. And if you notice, so at the last it says this falling levels of blue triggers sleep. It actually helps us to go to sleep, in fact. So after sunset, there's no light that's going to be above 3,000 or so Kelvin, which means that's all natural. That's all what we experience during the day, which means if you have a light on that's usually above 3,000 Kelvin, it's going to tell your body, daytime. In your home, out of your home, just the street lights, whatever it is, once your body perceives this bluish light with some blue in it, it's going to trigger it's actually going to turn off your melatonin production and disrupt your circadian rhythm. So you want to avoid that blue light. So almost like the nutritional facts on the back of a food, any light bulb you buy will have the thing that actually shows like what color temperature it is. I'd always say definitely go below 3,000 Kelvin, but if you can go lower, I really want that scale to go. Because we use in my house some 2700s, but a lot of 2200s. They're beautiful. By the way, old incandescent bulbs that you screw in, those are 1800. So it's not like, oh my God, we can't survive with this. We've gotten so accustomed to this bluer light since LEDs came across.
Well, and as you age, your eyes can perceive less light.
Also, by the way, as you age, your corneas actually start getting more scatter in them, and which means blue light scatters more than warmer light, lower frequency light. So that's why the sky is blue during the day, because the blue light just ricochets off of particles, just like if you have a more cloudy eye, which happens to all of us as we age, a little bit more calcium deposits in our eyes. Blue light becomes much more glaring. It's actually going to help you see better if you have warmer color light.
I just spent a weekend installing 20 ceiling lights in the kitchen area, and there are these versions that have a sliding scale from 2,700 to 5,000.
You just sat there.
No, we set them at 3,000
Yeah,
instead of 27. But our youngest child is very sensitive to light, and that's where they wanted it and no higher.
If you go higher, what happens? Because I've heard of a lot of people with photosensitivity that it's actually just emotionally disturbing to them, right?
Yeah.
Is that and it happens on those brighter, bluer lights, and I think it's our bodies telling us something, especially those who are most sensitive to it are they're just like canaries in the coal mine saying, hey, don't do this. And it's So I just want to finish with one last thing, and that's a little positive note, is that this is the Palos Preserves. You're probably familiar with it, not too far away from you. Jealous, it's actually a few years ago, after a few years of work, we got the Palos Preserves designated as an international dark sky place. It's 7,000 acres. Hopefully we're going to extend it past the canal to 10,000 acres this year. And this is from that satellite image, by the way. By the way, just for later. Okay. And this is its context in the region.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
Way to go.
Yes. We realized that, in fact, we worked with our students, mainly worked with high school students at the Adler Planetarium, worked with our students to collect the data, to actually generate the application, and to finally get the Urban Night Sky Place. And we know what bad lighting is now, hopefully. Hopefully you can't unsee it once you've seen it. And so it doesn't mean that there aren't solutions. And these are just a few of those examples where the light, in fact, that's a park in Rotterdam. And it's actually being illuminated by fluorescent plants. They actually glow on their own. This is an image from downtown Flagstaff. Flagstaff population about 100,000. This is an undoctored photograph. You can actually see the Milky Way stars from downtown Flagstaff. So good lighting design can actually solve most of those problems. I was just in a conference in Austria this last summer, and an amazing thing, one of the reasons why they hosted it there, was in the state of Upper Austria, was that they have an incredible policy where the entire state of Upper Austria turns off their street lights at 11 p.m. Just, they turn off. So we were there the first night and couldn't believe it, and then boom, all the lights went up, like, oh my God, and it's like, and it wasn't like cars are careening off the road or people are killing each other on the streets or anything. It was like, so the next night I definitely set up my camera and I got the moment when they turned off, and
Wow.
so that made that much of a difference.
On Flagstaff, because of the planetarium there, the planetarium has worked with the city of Flagstaff for decades.
Yeah.
And they have all these rules about not shining lights up, so it's like built into the structure of the municipality.
Yep. They were, in fact, Flagstaff was the first international dark sky community. There's 2 in Illinois right now. You could be the third.
There are only 2 in Illinois?
Homer Glen and Hawthorne Woods are the only 2 in Illinois, yes.
Wow.
I've had interest from other communities, so if you want to get in the competition. People reaching out to me and saying, hey, what can we do to maybe do this? So, I'd be willing to help as well. I forgot, there was one last thing. Ooh, that's right. So last year...
If we could get the shoreline because of the migration.
That'd be great, but yeah. Well, Beverly Shores in Indiana is actually a dark sky community. They're actually pretty old. They've been around as a dark sky community, been one of the first. So yeah. So this year, last year, we just passed first statewide legislation. Now it only covers, it's called the Responsible Outdoor Lighting Control Act. It's a statewide effort, a statewide law now, but it only applies to Department of Natural Resources lands. But it's passed. We worked on it for quite a while with Senator Ellman from Naperville and many other co-sponsors. And we feel like that's a great first step, but we're working on legislation right now to follow up, probably going to have to propose it next year, that will actually give communities or protected lands the choice. This happens to be a state-controlled road, LaGrange Road, going right through the Palos Preserves. There are over 300 lights, unshielded, actually they're high-pressure sodium lights, going right through our protected area. And our law would be, if you're a community or a protected area and the state controls the lighting there and they're going to do a retrofit, you have the choice to say, hey, be responsible to this protected area. Homer Glen, Hawthorne Woods, any other community could actually say, you have to give us an alternative because that's what that's why we've worked on this all this time. So finally, I know we're kind of maybe running long on time here. Sorry about that. Not too bad. But this is a link to our website for Dark Sky Chicago. We started a few years ago, and we're getting in contact with folks like you, giving talks, working with municipalities, with groups to try to help make it a better night. Great.
Do you guys have ways to connect us with folks that can help us appreciate the stars?
Yes. One of the first natural things is obviously people are interested in astronomy. So we have connections and relationships with so many astronomy groups around the region. So we did an event a year and a half ago now. It was last September. We had over 200 people at the Palos Preserves come out for a nighttime picnic. Now, you usually can't go to the forest preserves at night, but we're actually working on a special permit for the Payless Preserves. If you want to come out with a group or your family or whatever, you can actually go there. And so as a pilot for that, we had this public picnic where we had the Naperville Astronomy Club came out with telescopes. We had the Adler Planetarium come out with scopes. We had live music. It was just fun. It was beautiful. And it was under the stars. And yeah.
You also had something at Little Red Schoolhouse.
Yeah, and we've done a number of like nature walks and things with them where we work a lot with the Forest Preserves, Cook County.
Yeah, because we were there when there was like 200 people.
Oh, so yeah, was it up on the hill? Wait. Oh, maybe that was.
in the parking lot.
Yeah. That was with the Chicago Astronomical Society. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
no, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Any other questions, or?
Yeah, I had one on the commercial lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, since that one's probably one of the easier move the needle type of things, like how do you engage company CFOs on that, on purely an economic set of arguments?
So I can give you some I would say go local. There's actually one of our advocates at the Dark Sky Chicago group. He's working a lot with local Home Depots because Home Depot actually is a sponsor and a supporter of Dark Sky International. In fact, they sell, like for example, you go there, they'll sell ones that say have the Dark Sky friendly approved lighting on their packaging. But sometimes their parking lots are just overlit and not, so like, wait, walk the walk. And so like Dave Barkas has been working with local Home Depot. Like if you work on a corporate level, a large scale, I think you can do it in the individuals. I'll give you one anecdote is that someone reached out to me in Chicago, not too far from me, where he said, there's a store that it was a grocery store that put in all these flat panel LED parking lots lights, which are built to go like this, shine down. They tilted them all at 45 degrees because they're like, hey, it can cover more area. The person who lives across the street, I was literally, he was third floor apartment, across the street. I was measuring light levels, which are the IES standards for parking lot lighting. I literally was measuring the light levels in his bedroom that were recommended for his after hours parking lot. In fact, so like just 10 lux is actually about what you should have in a after hours parking lot. I was measuring 450 lux in the parking lot. And this was after the store was closed, anyway, long and short of it is, so I worked with him for a few months, got him all the information he needed, and he became an advocate. Because I didn't want to walk in there and say, hey, I'm this guy from, somewhere else telling you what to do. I wanted him to be the advocate. So that's kind of one thing we like to do at Dark Sky Chicago, is if you have a problem with a neighbor or a company or something we want to get you to be empowered to be able to make the change. Eventually, he and I went and met with him, and they got a cherry picker, and they tilted them all back down. Yep.
I mean, similarly, when we were first starting to get the city to turn the lights out for migration,
They were working with the building managers. We just went directly to the building
Yeah.
managers.
Yeah.
And they were so responsive once they were educated.
It's exactly it, because a lot of times they don't know what they're doing. They were just, oh, I don't know, my contractor went out there and put lights out. And they're like, did you realize you're lighting everybody's bedrooms for a block around you? And then also, I did a real quick lighting analysis and said, you could literally turn off, actually 2/3 of these lights, but he turned off half, still good. And if you tilt them down, and if you put them on the timer, and I showed him how much, literally in the thousands of dollars, he would save a year for the amount of excess lighting to use. So there was a good pitch as well. Yeah. Anyway.
Would it ever be possible, just thinking outside of the box, to have a town, like, for one night, turn almost all their lights out and do, a picnic, like, a picnic?
I don't know. Let's talk to some town that might be interested.
It'd be super fun.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very
Yes,
much,
thank
Ken.
you.
We'll definitely be continuing this conversation in the village, and we really appreciate the insight that you've given us tonight.
Thanks, and hopefully, if there's anything I can follow up with, let me know, and especially with the town, let me know, okay? All right. Thank you all. Thank you.